One of the sources to the concept of bar mitzvah, which is when a boy becomes 13, he becomes an adult according to Jewish law, and he becomes fully responsible for his own actions. The source of this, at least one of them, is from our Parsha, Parsha's Vayishlach. It says that there was two brothers, Shimon and Levi, from the 12 tribes of Yaakov, who went to avenge the dignity of their sister. The sister was defiled by a man named Shechem, who was the prince of a city. And it says, Vayikchu shnei bnei Yaakov, the two sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi, Ita A, who were the brother of Dinah, who was defiled, Ish Charbai, each man took his sword, and they killed Shechem, and they killed out the entire city. Now, it's mentioned in Medrash, that Shimon and Levi were 13 at the time of the story. And what does Torah call them? It doesn't call them boys, it calls them men, Ish. So from this, we see that a 13-year-old is called a man, and is a responsible, full-fledged adult that is responsible for his own actions. Now the Rebbe asks a very interesting question, which is, seemingly, an adult means you are forward-thinking. Maybe you can make long-term decisions with a developed prefrontal cortex. You're not so rash and impulsive. And that's why you're responsible for your decisions. You're able to start thinking for yourself. And hey, you have some das, maturity. Now, if this is the source, what's the source of this concept that a 13-year-old is considered a mature adult? Look at the story of Shimon and Levi. They acted very rash and seemingly very impulsive. They took swords and they killed out an entire city for the fact that their sister was defiled. So why is this the source of adulthood, that a 13-year-old becomes an adult, if seemingly their actions were very impulsive, childish, not so thought through? It would appear, at least from the basic reading of the Torah. It was a rash anger, and they took it out on the entire city. That's the question we're going to deal with today. But on top of that, we're going to deal with another question, which is, why is it that we're saying a teenager is an adult? Do we really package a 13-year-old together with a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, and view them all the same? They're all adults. Once you're 13 and up, you're treated the same. You're all responsible for your actions. As if below 13 is a child, above 13 is an adult, and halachically speaking, most things don't change from after 13. A little bit at 20 years old, it says that there's in a few aspects, some new small aspects of maturity. But generally speaking, at 13 you're an adult, fully responsible for your decisions. Halachically, someone could get married at 13 if they decide. Now, when you look at a 13-year-old, seemingly we don't see a lot of maturity. The brain is sort of developed. We call this the stage of adolescence, which is, it's not really child, it's not really adult. They have some extra forward thinking, but usually it just translates into anxiety and tension and acting out, rebellion. So what does this mean that a teenager is an adult and has become mature if usually it doesn't look like that? It almost looks like sometimes they have digressed from what they were as children. And the explanation given to this is as follows. Maturity doesn't mean that you're able to think longer term right now. That's like a very superficial explanation to maturity and to being a man. Becoming a man doesn't mean that I'm more forward thinking. Because if I'm more forward thinking, but I don't know who I am, I don't know what my values are, I don't know what I live for, and I don't know what I die for, then bigger thinking could just mean a bigger baby. A baby is someone who's selfish, or a kid is someone that's selfish, not sure where they're going in life. And if I'm not sure where I'm going in life and I have a bigger brain, then I just have more anxiety. I still don't know where I'm going in life, and I realize that life has bigger consequences and is very big and overwhelming. So just because someone has a bigger brain and can make longer term decisions, that's not full-fledged maturity, and that's not what that's not what being an adult means. Being an adult ultimately means not seichel, not intellect, but it means identity. Being able for me to choose what type of life am I going to live. Like Shimon and Levi, what am I going to live for and what am I going to die for? What am I willing to sacrifice my life for, and for which principles? Dinah was defiled. This cannot happen in our family. We cannot live with such neighbors. And they got up and they killed out the city. Yaakov, was it a right decision, a wrong decision? Yaakov argued with them, but at the end of the day, they were people that were deciding their destiny. They decided what type of people they're going to be. We are people of morality, and if we're in a city that handles this type of behavior, then we're not going to put up with it. And that was their decision. And that is what happens when someone becomes 13. Teenagehood, oftentimes the acting out of a teenager, the rebellion of a teenager, isn't because they're looking to rebel. It's because the antennas of life are so strong and so sharp. Who am I? They're trying to add the call of God, ayeka, Right? For it says that Hashem spoke to Adam after the first sin and said, Ayeka, where are you in life? Who are you? And where do you stand relative to what your mission should be? That is a question that's burning deep inside a teenager. And if we don't know how to give ourselves over to answer that question, then there's a lot of tension inside. I don't find peace with the superficials of adult life, and I'm not caught up in the worries of the world yet. I have to just face life at its most existential questions, and that is very hard. Hence, there's a lot of tension built up. A lot of steam needs to be blown, and acting out happens. But ultimately, that's all a result to the fact that right now the antennas are sharp too. Who am I? What is life all about? Teenagers are very deep, and they oftentimes are wondering life's most existential questions. What's life all about? Who should I become? What's my life worth? And this is the maturity of a teenager. Ultimately, in a sense, a teenager is even more mature than an adult. Because an adult, if you just blow past your teenage life, then an adult, you don't never really go back to that existential side until it hits you at midlife crisis. I often share with students or teenagers, you face life's truths in one of two places. Either when you're young and you decide to face it, or if not, it'll just blow up at you once your kids start growing up, and you look back and say, where has my life gone, and what exactly am I doing here? At some point, these questions catch up with people, and that's what maturity really means. For someone to flex their adulthood as a teenager doesn't just mean to think. It doesn't just mean to academically achieve. It means to be able to choose an identity. What is my life centered around? What do I hold my sword towards? What do I live for? And what do I die for? And when we have that, when we have a center of the target about what our life's about, then we have context that our brains don't go so anxious and in circles and make us act out. At that point, we have comfort in knowing that I've devoted my life to a cause. I've devoted my life to a purpose greater than myself. And if that's what becoming a bar mitzvah means, that's what being a teenager and ultimately an adult means, then the more I experience in life, at least I have an anchor and a target, and all of the sophistication that adulthood brings is centered around the simple devotion that I've given myself over to bigger godly principles. There's an interesting story, I don't remember if we ever shared this before, of the Rebbe who one time sent an emissary to a meeting of Rabbanim and said that one of the Rabbanim over there has some beef with me. It doesn't really, doesn't like me or is upset at me. If you could find out what his issue is. So the Shliach went to the Rav at some point, found the time to go to him, and said, the Rebbe wants to know what exactly is bothering you about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he said, listen, and obviously the Rebbe is a great tzaddik, Talmid Chacham, but there's two questions about what the Rebbe does that bothers me. One is, all the Rabbanim in the world, all the rabbis in the world, the Aguda, the big organizations, could make the decision about what should happen with world Jewry, what direction we should follow, and the Rebbe just has his own path, and he doesn't... Who does he question? Who does he run his ideas by? Why is it that the Orthodox world could make these decisions and the Rebbe just makes his own decision? Where does he get the confidence or the clarity or the breitkeit, the broad shoulders in order to make these decisions? That's one question. Second question, the Rebbe says the point of the world is to bring God's presence down to this world, to make a dir b'tachtainim. The concept of a dir b'tachtainim is in a medrash in Parshas Nasai. So the Rebbe takes this one medrash in Parshas Nasai, that the point of the world is to make a dir b'tachtainim, and decides that that's the entire purpose of existence. Who says? There's many midrashim, and there's many reasons it says that the world exists. Why does the Rebbe take this one medrash and turn that into the whole focal point of life? And the Shliach brought back the message to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe told this Shliach to tell the Rav that his second question answers his first question. Because I know what life centers around, because I know that the whole purpose of the world is to bring Mashiach and to bring God's presence down to this world, that's why I don't need to go asking about running my ideas to a bunch of other Rabbanim who aren't sure what this entire thing called Judaism is centered around. I have clarity and I know what my mission is devoted. My mission is, my entire life's mission is devoted towards bringing Shekhinah here to this world, bringing God's presence down to this world. So then my decisions are built, all my thought processes, all the strategies that we're going to do is built around that one center of the target. If you don't know what the center of the world is, there's a bunch of midrashim, so then I'm not going to make the decisions based on you. Anyways, this is a concept obviously very relevant for teenagers, but relevant to adults as well. We shouldn't just keep bucking the big questions of life and pushing them down until eventually they catch up with us. We need to make firm decisions to answer God's calling, Ayeka. Who am I? What am I? What is the purpose? Why did Hashem make me alive with my unique skills and my unique pros and cons in my circumstances. For what purpose? What am I doing over here? And what exactly is the cause that I'm meant to be given over to? And how am I meant to be given over to it? And then the rest of life just fits into context. We could still work, we could still have fun, we could still do this, but at least it's centered around a greater cause that I'm devoted to, and that is what being a man means. What can I hold my soul to? What can I hold my sword towards? And we should learn this lesson from Shimon and Levi. Have a great Shabbos.